All right. We're back here on the Big Orange podcast for another midweek segment. It was a big news day. So, Zach and I thought we would hop on here and talk about everything that happened today for Tennessee football. First off, some very good news for Tennessee. Arion Carter, 4-star linebacker out of Smyrna, Tennessee, chooses the Vols over Alabama in a situation where it really looked like he was going to choose Alabama for a long time. And Tennessee kind of swept in right at the end and got him. We'll talk about that in just a second. And then in the latter half of this segment, Jalin Hyatt. He's not going to be playing in the Orange Bowl. He's going to go for NFL prep over potentially putting his body at risk in the bowl game. Can't blame him, but it's going to be tough not seeing your best wide receiver out there during the bowl game. And especially against a Clemson defense that's pretty good, and we're going to talk about how Tennessee's offense might stack up without him and kind of break all of that down. But let's first talk about Arion Carter. I love this so much because I think it I don't know. Do I want to put it this way? I'll put it this way. It makes us right, Zach. It validates some things we said earlier in the season. It doesn't everybody loves to be right. We had some segments on this show earlier in the season where we talked about the importance of winning these big games that you haven't won in however long and switching up the perception of this program. And I think you saw the importance of that in front of your eyes with this Arion Carter commitment, because Tennessee was not really in on this deal all that much. And they had him for a visit for Florida, and I think you really enjoyed it. But just in these last few weeks, Tennessee seals up a 10-2 season, and they put on this final big push. They get him in one of his final visits, and Josh Heupel does this in-home visit and all this stuff. And I would look, this is conjecture on my part, but I really think this is the case. If you don't have that 10-2 season, you're not getting this kid. And also, there's definitely more that plays into this. I think he's definitely looking for playing time, and NIL is probably a factor. It's layered, but this is huge. And you're not going to beat Alabama for commits without beating Alabama or having a 10-2 season or something like that. Do you think I'm wrong, Zach?
No, I think you're pretty much on track. I think the 10-2 season had a lot to do with it, and he told On3 that his relationship with Josh Heupel, the way that he built that relationship over the last couple of months, was the other driving, deciding factor in this decision. He even said, without that relationship, he's not committed to Tennessee. Obviously, you can talk about NIL. I'm sure that factored in to some extent, but I'm guessing that was probably close to equal on both sides. This really came down to Tennessee and Alabama. Ohio State really wasn't as big of a factor. They just kind of had a hat on the table just for looks there. It was completely Tennessee, Alabama. So the NIL stuff, when it's close to equal, it's just like old school recruiting. It comes down to relationships. And Josh Heupel proved that he can build that type of relationship with an in-state kid. Kids like this have been getting away from Tennessee. I mean, really good defensive player from the mid-state area. We've seen a lot of those head elsewhere, go to Clemson or even Kentucky at times, Ohio State. So this is absolutely massive. I think not just to get him that he's a talented kid, but what it means for the football team and next year and the coming years. Super important player, very smart guy, fast kid, can play linebacker, move side to side. Was a running back as well, kind of like Jeremy Banks. So you're kind of replacing Banks with a similar type player. Fast, physical, exactly what you want from a linebacker. He's going to be the type of guy that can get the defense lined up, be the captain of the defense. He's really going to be an important part of this defense moving forward. If they're going to play at a high level, it's going to start with him and these types of kids. So it's absolutely massive pickup. I think he's just a 4-star guy, but he's really probably maybe the second or probably the third most important player in this class behind Nico and David Hobbs, I'd say.
Yeah, in terms of measurables, 6'1", 215. I mean, you got to imagine he's going to bulk up when he gets here. He did have an interesting story that you mentioned there. He was initially a running back and didn't get much Power 5 attention, I don't think, at least from the things that I read. And then it came where he switched to linebacker and everything sort of changed. Suddenly it was Alabama, Ohio State, Tennessee, all of this Power Five attention. I think another factor in this is that Tennessee at this point, you have two of the top three players in the state of Tennessee uh, going to UT, and then the number two player in the state is going outside of Tennessee. And I don't want to say that's a win. You didn't get him here, but he's not playing for a rival. He's playing for a team that is you're never even going to play, Notre Dame. And so you got to appreciate that. And so good in-state recruiting is always good. It's not a huge factor. The bigger thing here for me is four-star linebacker that chose out you over Alabama, but still a factor in all of this. I just, man, you can't say enough. You beat Nick Saban for a recruit, and where Nick Saban really made a push at the end, I believe, didn't Alabama get the final visit? And
I think they were supposed to have a visit after this announcement, which was kind of the news that came out earlier this week when he said that he was committing Wednesday. And I know Josh Heupel was there at his school earlier this week and spent a significant amount of time at his school. I think school even tweeted out, thanks for coming by and spending time here. So they really did the full court press. I think
they did though. December 9th, after having the full visit to Tennessee, he went back on December 9th, according to 247, his timeline here. He have had an official visit to Alabama on the 9th. So, but as you said, Tennessee sort of swooped in. Still,
yeah, I think Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator, was supposed to come in after or later this week and visit with him. And clearly that wasn't. I mean, he'd already made his mind up. Apparently, if that was the case, Alabama wanted him. Don't let Alabama fans tell you that they didn't, because they did. They wouldn't put that much effort into it if they didn't. And Tennessee was able to beat them out. I mean, that's huge. Though haven't seen a lot of those in recent years where you would go head to head with you've seen Tennessee go head to head with kids that have Alabama offers and get those kids, but maybe Alabama wasn't really pursuing them hard, or it wasn't a committable offer. This wasn't the case here.
Yeah, you legit beat them out for him. And now, I mean, you look at the defensive emphasis that has been put on this recruiting class. In a couple of years, if all these guys stick around and they develop correctly, and especially up front, I mean, he won't be getting Rodney Garner's teaching, which I think in terms of Tennessee's defense is that it doesn't get better in terms of defensive coaches for Tennessee, but I think you still saw linebacker development with the guys that are there. And so if everybody progresses correctly in 2 years, I think Tennessee has a pretty stout lineup, which is surprising given what it looks like at the moment. Because you look at who's there on, starting with the defensive line: Joshua Joseph, Bryce Neeson, Amari Thomas, James Pierce, Tyree West. Who are some of the guys that'll actually play? Dejon Terry up front, and then on the edges, Tyler Barron, Roman Harrison, and at linebacker, Juwan Mitchell, who he can come back. I think, wouldn't it be like a 7th year in college or like a 6th for him?
Probably a 6th, I believe, if he comes back. It's hard. It's really, I cannot wait until we get to 2024 or whatever, and we don't have to think about those extra COVID years anymore. It's very confusing. You see players declaring for the draft, and it's like, well, you've been at your school for 5 years. Of course you're going pro. Like Will Levis, for example. And it's like, oh, he still could have come back for another year. And it's hard to keep up with who has eligibility and who doesn't at this point.
But Aaron Beasley is set at that position for next year. Elijah Herring, I think, is a guy that they're really looking for some good production from. But I think another big factor in this for Carter, where it separates Tennessee from Alabama, is I think this kid has a chance to get on the field nearly immediately. And that's big. I do think, I wonder if Juwan Mitchell leaves, surely they go to the portal, right? Like they probably do it anyway.
They need to anyway. Yeah, they need depth at linebacker. They need depth pretty much everywhere on the defensive side of the ball. They need depth at offensive line. I mean, the program's in a lot better shape than it was when Josh Heupel arrived, but they still don't have the depth that Alabama and Georgia has. So, which is encouraging because look at what they did without it this year. 10-2, they lose to South Carolina in November. That game really wasn't the depth. We know what happened that night. It was just a bad night. Things went askew. But they made it through November pretty healthy. They were pretty lucky to not have to deal with a ton of major injuries and having to like reshuffle your offensive line or anything like that. But you can't count on that every single year. You kind of got to plan to have injuries, and then if you don't, great, that's awesome. But you just kind of assume that you're going to have to use some of that depth.
Absolutely. So now Tennessee, at least according to 247, they sit at number 9 overall.
Yeah, they jumped Florida.
Yep.
Back in front of Florida. Because Florida, Billy Napier, his year didn't go too great, but he has been recruiting better as of late. It kind of started off a little rocky there. So we'll see how that goes. Keep an eye on Florida. I'm not really sure what to make of that situation with Napier yet. It could really go either way as far as he takes them to a championship level or he trends their own direction. Next year will be very telling as far as the trajectory of that program.
Yeah. I mean, I think just what's so impressive with this class when you look at it, obviously, I already brought up the guys on the roster that you're going to have going forward. But just in this class, David Hobbs, number 4 defensive lineman in America this coming year. Shandavian Bradley, number 10 edge rusher. Caleb Herring, number 12 edge rusher in the class. Arion Carter, number 13 linebacker in the class. Then you have the cornerbacks, Jordan Matthews, number 21 cornerback. Sylvester Smith, supposedly some other schools are kind of gunning for him, I've seen. But if all goes well, they're big-time safety. Like the defensive pickups in this class are as impressive as getting Nico Iamaleava is. The defense is really the thing that shines in this recruiting class because Tennessee so badly needs that. And I think you see that Heupel is going to have just his pick as far as transfers go on the offensive side of the ball. And so winning in recruiting on the defensive side of the ball, huge. Can't say enough about it. Love this pickup. But anything else about Arion Carter before we move to this, I'll say unfortunate Jalin Hyatt news, even though it's good for him. It's good for Jalin Hyatt. Unfortunate for Tennessee fans wanting Tennessee to win the Orange Bowl. But anything else with recruiting?
No, just that his timing was pretty good because it helped offset the Hyatt news just a little bit because you had something to be excited about. And it was real toss up there. How did you feel watching the ceremony, the clip of him grabbing the hats? Because he, we've seen that move a lot. Seen it a ton where they reach for a hat and they throw it or something. Or who's that one recruit? I think was it Auburn or Georgia, and we thought he was going to Tennessee, and he throws the hat across the room. You've seen all kinds of things where they kind of try to trick you. And Carter, he reaches for the Tennessee hat and puts it down, and my heart stopped at that point because typically when they pick it up and put it down, they don't go back to it. And he reaches, for the Ohio State hat, touches the Alabama hat, pulls the Alabama hat up, and at that point I'm like very, very unnerved. And then he finally pulls out a second Tennessee hat. Everybody, rips his jacket open, Tennessee shirt. His mom's got Tennessee on. I think even the little baby that was somebody's baby was up there. It's in Tennessee stuff. So it was a good reveal. A job well done. It's hard to get too creative with commitments anymore because almost everything's been done. But he went old school with the hat trick and still made it work. So
yeah, it's pretty sly. I wasn't watching it live, so I only saw what you put on Twitter immediately after, and I was like, oh boy, I like this guy already. This is good. And I'll throw in this tidbit at the end. Some of the stuff that I read is that he's potentially, obviously his talent is great, but also potentially a GPA booster too. Supposedly a good student. I somewhere read he had aspirations, maybe had aspirations. I don't know if still has aspirations, but had aspirations to be a doctor at one point.
Maybe be another, like, what was that Myron Roll that was the Rhodes Scholar at Florida State at that time? Maybe another one of those.
Maybe
you never know.
He could be the Grant Williams of Tennessee football. Will he be? Will he be one of the greatest players to ever play here, Zach?
Are we putting too much on him too soon? He will be
Well,
at practices too, I believe, at bowl practices because
yes.
he's enrolling early, so that'll be good. You kind of get to see the defense. We still don't really know for sure if Jeremy Banks is playing in the bowl game or not. I think he wants to. I think there might be some grade issues possibly there. We're not 100% sure
Mm.
what the deal is. But hopefully he plays because we saw how the defense looks without him. So the hope is that he plays and maybe Arion Carter can watch him practice and kind of see how he does things, how he leads the defense, and it'll be a lot for him to learn there.
Yeah, I did see one other place that said that being able to go to the bowl practices was one of the reasons why the commitment was moved up.
Mm.
Although I also almost think it was under Tennessee's encouragement to be like, all right, we're not going to let Alabama in here anymore, you know. But either way, that's cool. And yeah, with Jeremy Banks, hopefully it's all good. Hopefully he didn't do a little Irish exit on his classes there at the end, just not showing
A
up.
la Cordero Patterson, who could not have come back even if he wanted to.
Come on. Hopefully that's not the case.
No, and we don't know. We're not saying that is for sure either, by the way, but there are,
Yes,
slight concern there.
the rumors were swirling, but hopefully they are that, just rumors. So, in other news, Jalin Hyatt right after this, they definitely timed this on purpose.
Well, so they were both at 1.
Yes,
Do you think Tennessee was like, hey,
yes,
push it back 15 minutes, Jalin?
because it was, when you look at the exact timing, it was the announcement. So Hyatt says, I'm announcing at 1. And then you look at 1 and there's no announcement. And then Aaron Carter commits. And
it wasn't. It was like it was 10 minutes after 1 before he finally committed because they
yes.
had how those signing ceremonies go.
And so it gets pushed out. It's like, 110, 115. And then finally Hyatt almost immediately after, 2-3 minutes after, drops out on Instagram and goes, I'm heading out. So yes, I think it was very deliberately timed, probably on Hyatt's end, I would guess, where the coaches were maybe like, "Hey, we're going to get this kid," because it was clear Carter had made it known he was going to choose Tennessee. The On3 had like a 1,000-word story already written the second he committed. People knew this was going to happen, so maybe there was coordination there where they went, "Hey, we're going to get this guy." Right after he does that, drop this because fans aren't going to be too happy. Like nobody's mad, I don't think, but he's your best wide receiver sitting out of honestly the biggest bowl game that you've played in 20 years, and that stings. It hurts. You wish he's playing for sure, but your thoughts on Hyatt opting out to go pro?
I mean, I pretty much assumed that he was going to go pro, and I leaned towards him not playing in the bowl game. I'd already, pre-written all that and assumed that that's what he was going to go with. So it wasn't a big surprise, though. Like when we were texting earlier today, when he says that he has an announcement, we're kind of thinking, okay, maybe this does mean there's something different going on here. Maybe he's going to go pro but play in the bowl game, because why else would you say that you're going to have an announcement? But I guess that was just his way of putting it out there. I mean, I get it. I totally understand it. If it was my kid, I would probably push him in that direction. I know that's not what like old school football fans like to hear, but it's a different era. It's not the same as it was. Even when Jalen Hurd, left the team in 2016. I mean, if he did that now, wouldn't be a big deal. I mean, Tyon Evans did it last year. Nobody really batted an eye when he left the program. So things happen. You're thinking about your career, your future. Jalin Hyatt might be a top 40 pick right now, but he's kind of on the bubble because of his size and the offense he's played in. Not that I'm saying those questions. I mean, every question when you evaluate a player that can be drafted is legitimate, because these teams are going to sink a lot of money into these players, and there's a lot of players in the same neighborhood. And if they don't like Jalin, they'll get another player with a similar skill set that they think will fit what they do. So all those questions are fair. But because those questions are there, and because he's not a sure of a thing as some of these other wide receivers, at least in the NFL's eyes, he gets an injury in the Orange Bowl, and maybe you're talking about him dropping to the 4th or 5th round. That cuts into signing bonus,
Yep.
your 4-year contract, and the goal is, if you're Jalin, you're leaving as a true junior, so you're 3 years out of high school. You're hoping to get to that first free agent contract or extension, which is the way the NFL is going now. If you're a good wide receiver, unless your name's AJ Brown, you get extended by the team that drafted you. Um, so you want to get to that a year faster. I mean, that's the goal for Jalin. You want to get to that when you're 25 years old instead of 26 years old. So I totally understand it. I understand sitting out because not to put that in jeopardy. It's a tough decision. I think it was tough on him. I think his heart, he probably would like to play and be there with his team. And he's going to be there. He said in his message he's going to be in Miami and supporting the team. I think in his heart, he would like to be on the field. But I think his head's like, no, this is the right business decision. I would love to be there, but this isn't going to result in a national championship. I've got to take care of my future. And it is his future. It's his future of his future kids, his family. Obviously, family is very important to him. So that's what goes into those decisions, and I totally get it.
Yeah, this is Hyatt taking the you could say it this way, taking the Dave Ramsey approach. You Dave Ramsey guy, Zach, at all? The don't spend money you don't have and all that.
Not totally. I mean, I like Dave Ramsey. I've listened to it. I just haven't really practiced it.
It's sound financial advice. Think about the guy, whatever you want. I know he's a controversial figure with some folks, but
He is a Tennessee guy.
he is. He's a Tennessee grad. He spoke at my graduation at Tennessee, actually, my undergrad graduation. But this is Hyatt going. I'm not going to the restaurants now. I'm not buying the fancy car now. I'm not going to do this thing so that later I can buy the fancy car and I can have it. Putting aside the records at Tennessee, putting aside a potential win in the Orange Bowl and these things, and going that would be incredible. I am with you. I think absolutely he would love to do that, but he has to think about that NFL future, because man, you just take such a hard hit if you end up getting injured in that game. Like it just really would be absolutely brutal. You look at what happened with Matt Corral last year, and you just it's hard not to get spooked if you're him, I think, when you look at situations like that. And so I can't blame him for 1 second. He's going, I'm going to put this off now so that later, I know I had my full shot at the NFL, and I did everything that I could to prepare for that adequately. So I wanted to see him play so bad. I mean, I wanted to see him come back. I wanted to see him come back to Tennessee, but I think that might have been a pipe dream. And so here we are. He's going to sit out. But here's my question now: what does Tennessee's offense look like in this bowl game? It's dicey at this point. The conventional wisdom is Darnell Wright will play. But then, and obviously Hendon Hooker out with ACL injury. And so otherwise now Hyatt out. So
Tillman's out.
Sorry, I was thinking there's one more that I'm not thinking of. Tillman is out now. So you're down two of your best receivers. It'll be Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Walker Merrill, Mermel Keaton. A different set of guys, but honestly, guys that Joe Milton is probably plenty familiar with playing with. You would assume he practices with the twos a decent amount. And so how badly you think this hurts Tennessee?
I mean, it's really hard to tell because obviously Jalin Hyatt brought such a different dimension to the offense, and Clemson players they've already been talking to the media this week, and one of their linebackers specifically mentioned Hyatt by name and how he can take the top off a defense, and they go with a very bend but don't break approach, which is, I wonder if they change that now that Hyatt's out, which would definitely benefit Tennessee because that's the type of defense that has given Tennessee trouble at times this year, especially when they finally get into the red zone. But like you said, Milton's got experience with Squirrel White, with Ramel Keaton, with Walker Merrill. Brew McCoy's a veteran. He's going to produce regardless. He's made some huge – he didn't make a lot of highlight-worthy plays as far as the Jalin Hyatt and Cedric Tillman type catches. He made a lot of really important catches, a lot of like 3rd and long, 4th down catches, kept the chains moving, just clutch receptions. So, you're going to have him. And this is really the chance to see, can Squirrel White become the next Jalin Hyatt? I don't know if he's as fast as Hyatt. They've asked him that before. Squirrel says they're pretty close, that Hyatt might have a little bit on him. He's still a very fast guy that can also take the top off of defense. And we've seen him do it with Milton several times at the end of the games. He did it against Missouri, I believe,
Yep.
in that game, and against South Carolina, he did it at the end of
Hmm.
that game as well. So you know that he can produce at a high level. Let's see if he can be consistent with it. Do it against a team like Clemson when the game's not out of hand. That's the big thing. And Ramel Keaton, you've seen him all year also make these huge catches. I mean, where would they be without Keaton? When Tillman went down, he stepped in, and the offense really didn't miss a beat. He made a lot of clutch catch. I mean, that catch against Florida is one we'll see on highlight reels forever. The diving catch, and he made one of the catches on the drive to beat Alabama. So you've still got a really good group of wide receivers. You just don't know how electric White will be compared to Hyatt, and that's the big thing that we're going to find out. So I think that's why this game's so intriguing. Obviously, you want to beat Clemson. You want to get to 11-2. You want to have bragging rights over Clemson. They don't have a lot of opt outs. They're one of their best defensive players isn't playing, Miles Murphy, pass rusher. So that's huge for Tennessee.
Another
And
guy's
then,
hurt.
yeah, Trenton Simpson, their second leading tackler, is hurt, so he won't be playing. I think he's got an ankle deal like Tillman had. But for the other than that, their whole team's playing, and specifically on offense. So that you want to beat this Clemson team that's almost at full strength, and Tennessee's not. Tennessee's going to be missing a what should have been a Heisman finalist, the Bolitnikoff winner, the leading returning receiver in the SEC entering this season. Those are three pretty important players that you don't have on the offensive side of the ball. If you can beat Clemson without those guys, I mean, there's a lot of hype going into next year because right now there's a lot of uncertainty. How's Joe Milton going to play? How's this offense going to produce without Hooker on the field, without Hyatt on the field, without Tillman? You can answer a lot of those questions starting against Clemson. So it's a very intriguing game from that aspect. And I think having White having to play that Jalin Hyatt role makes it even more intriguing to see how dynamic he can be in that setting.
To me, I said this before and after the Vanderbilt game, I just so badly want to see Joe Milton legitimately unleashed because in his entire career at Tennessee, we haven't been able to see that. He played a snoozer game in his first start. They won by what, like 40 or whatever, and then he got hurt in the very next game. So like we haven't seen him actually, and especially now that he's had time to progress and learn with Hendon Hooker and do everything that's happened there, we we haven't seen him like in that Vandy game. Clearly, they were like, "You're not running. We're not risking anything," uh, and they took that entire element out of the game, and then they just ran the ball in the second half with guys that weren't Joe Milton, and so everything was sort of nullified in that game. Like nothing, we didn't see anything all that real from him outside of a couple of bomb throws, and then he airmailed a few other throws that you could argue weather was a factor. So in this one, you got to assume the weather's probably going to be nice. It's Miami. I think hopefully, Lord willing, no, good weather in this one, and let the man play football. I want to see what this guy does, and I think that makes the biggest difference to me. If they let him run, and specifically if they let him throw balls over the middle of the field, because it seems like that's actually something he does well. He has connected on a decent amount of those throws in the games that he has played, and I think he got guys like Ramel Keaton who really excel in that space. Like that's really his game more than the long ball, where you go with Squirrel White or somebody like that. Brew McCoy, big sort of mid range guy. Like I think you can really test Milton in that way without putting the ball in too much danger, scheme wise. So that's all I want to see, and that just is going to make such a huge difference. And here's the thing: your guess is as good as mine as far as how they're going to do with any of that. What their plan is, what their strategy is, I don't know. And Heupel keeps all of that extremely under wraps. Doesn't like any of that stuff out and around. And obviously, we saw with Hooker, they're willing to change anything, adapt anything to players they have. Send Princeton Fant to be a fullback, make maybe Squirrel White is running more of those end rounds, things like that. Who knows? Like we're just gonna have to see. But I just want to see the guy give the man a full football game, let him play, and let's see what he can actually do. And I think they're gonna. We'll just have to see. But I think they will in this week.
I think part of the reason they didn't against Vanderbilt was the backup quarterback situation was not good. Taven Jackson wasn't available, so you had a couple of walk-ons there that you were relying on with Gaston Moore and Navy Schuler. don't know how available Taven Jackson is going to be for this bowl game yet. I think I've heard that he's been throwing some lately. I mean, he got injured in the UT Martin game, which was what, October 22nd. So it'll be 2 full months post injury and an extra week there whenever the Orange Bowl takes place. If he's available and healthy and can be the backup, maybe they let the reins off of uh, Milton a little more and let him run around because you've kind of got that
Please.
safety net there that, okay, if something happens to Milton, even if it's just for a drive or two, you can throw Taven Jackson in there, who's been in this offense since last spring, 4-star guy that's obviously got talent. And we really, you want to see what he can do too. Uh, Not the you probably don't want to see him against Clemson because it means things haven't went well. But it is a guy that's also intriguing as far as next season goes. So I think that'll be a big part of what they do on offense. If he's available, you can let Milton fly around a little more and see how he's running now because last year he was a little timid at times. I mean, we all remember the Ole Miss game. He's a big guy, and a couple of times that he's ran earlier this year, he looked a lot more physical. If he can add that to his game and be a physical runner, there aren't many guys out there going to tackle him. I mean, he's literally like Cam Newton size, and nobody could tackle Cam Newton in college and barely in the NFL. So he has that type of potential as far as his physical build, and that could open up all kinds of different elements into this offense. And kind of like you were
No.
saying, Josh Hype on them. It's exciting just to think about that they've got a month to prepare for Clemson and to watch film and figure out ways to beat them. It sucks that Alex Golish isn't there to help with that because obviously it's Heupel's offense and you got confidence in that, but these guys bounce ideas off of each other and they work so well together. And maybe Golish sees things that Heupel doesn't see, and they make it all work. So I do think you'll miss Golish in that aspect, but at the same time, giving Heupel 4 weeks to prepare for a team does kind of excite you because you know that he can manipulate things to get what he wants as far as the offensive looks and make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I just want them to unleash Pandora's box here. There is a lot that could be done with this kid, and I want to see their creativity here. And the thing that scares me that I wonder is like, will they get timid and then go and be like, it's just a bowl game. We're not gonna. We'll see. And then the final thing, and we're going to talk about that more. We'll have a preview this coming week. No, well, actually, won't be. It'll be the next week, won't it? Where we preview the actual football game.
Yeah.
We'll give our full preview and prediction. But final thing, you mentioned it a little bit there. Alex Golish will not be there. There was an update on Tennessee's offensive coordinator position. This was from John Bryce, right? Where's he at now?
Football Scoop.
Football Scoop. Right?
Yeah.
What did he have to say?
He said that kind of just went through a breakdown of what kind of the options are right now for Tennessee at this point. And it seems like, as we've expected, the best in-house candidate to replace Golish is Joey Hosley, the quarterback's coach, which is who I think is probably going to end up in that role. And he also mentioned Joe John Finley, who was a former Oklahoma player, was on staff at some of the same times as Josh Heupel at Oklahoma. He's moved around a little bit. I think he's back at Oklahoma now. He went last year, but he was at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin briefly. Goes back to Oklahoma. He's also been at Texas A&M. He was at Missouri whenever Heupel was there, but he stayed when Heupel left to go to UCF. Joe John Finley stayed at Missouri for an extra year, so I don't know what the deal there is or why that was the decision made. Either way, it's a guy that Heupel knows really well and has kind of been in his offense before, coach tight ends. So it makes a lot of sense as a guy that you could bring on staff. It's probably going to be Heupel calling plays. Bryce mentioned that. I think everybody pretty much assumes that. Even if Joey Hosley, who for continuity purposes would be the right option in my opinion, it's still going to be Heupel mostly calling those plays. Now, the way they work, Joey was in the booth the past 2 years at Tennessee. He was up there last year, right beside Golish, same this year. So he knows the process. He understands how Heupel likes to work. Obviously, he's been with Heupel since the mid-2000s at Oklahoma and followed him pretty much everywhere he's gone, except I think he did step away from coaching for like a year or two. but he's only been pretty much with Heupel, so he understands how Heupel operates, and that's to me that's important in this offense. We've talked about it before.
Oh yeah.
That's you're not going to go get some new innovative offensive mind because you have that already. You just need the guy there because Heupel's. I mean, he's the head coach. He can't. It's hard to call plays and do all this other stuff. Call plays 100% with no input from anybody, while also managing your team and making the game day decisions that have to be made. That's a tough spot to be in. So you need somebody like Hosley who can see things from up there and who Heupel trusts. And if Finley can step into that role as far as being another eye in the box, because I assume he wants to hire a tight ends coach that he can put up there because it seemed like he liked having two coaches. And that makes sense in this offense. As fast as they move, you kind of need a coach staying a play or two ahead
Yeah.
and different
Almost like a spotter.
situations. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because you got to, if it's 1st and 10, okay, we need a play if it's incomplete or no gain, we need another play for 2nd and 10. Then we also need a play for 2nd and 3. Like you got to have those options. You need a play for 2nd and 15 in case there's a false start. You want to have all that so you don't lose your tempo. And that's just how they operate. So it's going to be somebody that he's familiar with. Another option that never really has coached with Heupel, but knows him well is the former North Texas head coach that was just fired, Seth Luttrell. He's been a tight ends coach at a lot of different places. He was Heupel's teammate at Oklahoma. They were both captains on the 2000 Oklahoma team that won the national championship. He was a running back. Obviously, Heupel's a quarterback, so pretty familiar with each other. They've never coached together. Luttrell didn't spend time at Oklahoma. He didn't coach under Bob Stoops at any point. He actually coached under Mike Leach at Texas Tech for a few years as a running backs coach, 4 years, I believe. So he's got kind of, and Kevin Wilson, who's another Oklahoma guy when he was the head coach in Indiana. So they've been around a lot of the same guys, same systems, philosophies. They know each other. Maybe that's a guy that Heupel reaches out to. He needs a job. Obviously, he probably has aspirations to be a head coach again, maybe give it another shot after watching Golish go be a head coach at UCF after 2 years at Tennessee. I think that makes this assistant coach opening a lot more attractive to potential coaches because Golish has already proven you can quickly move to a better job.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. Whoever they hire, just make sure they can recruit. That's why, because even with the offensive coordinator, Josh Heupel can call those plays. A tight ends coach, it's probably generous to say they're a dime a dozen, but I think there's a lot of guys out there that could do a decent job with the tight ends of Tennessee. But can they recruit? That's just always what it comes down to with me. So, hey, if those guys can and they're willing to come in and work like, let's be honest, work like dogs to get kids into this program, great. Come on down. So
I hear Brian Niedermeyer is available. He doesn't have a job or a college job at the moment. He coached tight ends at one time.
Yeah, why doesn't he have a college job?
Yeah.
That's I can't.
He'll never see this though. He blocked me on Twitter. He'll never see any of this.
I don't think he blocked. Well, he may have. No, he did because it was after whatever
what it was either.
Didn't he say some clown nonsense about something? Everybody was like dunking on him. I think I got blocked.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was when somebody decommitted or committed to somewhere. It was one of his kids, I believe, at IMG because that's where he's at now. He's a defensive coordinator at IMG Academy in Florida. And I think one of the kids that Tennessee was going after ended up committing elsewhere. Was it Carnell Tate?
That's what it was. What it was.
Yes, when he committed to Ohio State, and he was tweeting some stuff, like subtweeting at Tennessee, and we, few people pointed because he didn't have a big Twitter presence at the time because he had shut down his old account when all this stuff happened at Tennessee. He was wrapped up in the payments and all that. Started a new account that not a lot of people were following at the time. So when it surfaced, he just went on a blocking spree. I saw quite a few people replying that he had blocked them. So good time.
I'm pretty sure he did in that whole because
I'm pretty sure he'll never come to Knoxville again in his life.
He better not. We don't want him here. All right, I think that's gonna be it. We're going a little off the reservation here. That's another midweek segment. People have been really liking them. We appreciate everybody listening. Still, the audience on YouTube has been unreal. Too good to us, folks. And now it's I got to go deal with our HVAC is getting fixed finally,
Do you
Zach.
want to
And
tell that brief story real quick about your adventure
yeah, so
yesterday?
I this is relevant to the show because the roofers for my house they made their debut in this week's episode of the Big Orange Podcast. I didn't have another place to record, so we just had to work through guys being on my roof. And the next day, woke up at 7 a.m. to a giant crash in my living room, and one of those roofers had put his whole leg through our ceiling. Um, and popped out a light, a can light out of our ceiling. Also, the can light was hanging down. I sent you a picture, Zach. And the real topper on all of that is that at the same time, our HVAC was crapped out. The fan motor died, and that's literally getting fixed as I speak currently. And so it was 53 degrees in my house yesterday morning, and there was a roofer's leg coming out of the ceiling and insulation all over our couch, and it was a time.
So we've only texted since this happened. And I haven't asked you. Were you asleep still when it happened, or were you up and moving around and just all of a sudden was this like a full like Chevy Chase like moment or something where somebody
we were
crashes through?
we were up, but in our bedroom. I did not see any of it happen. But it was like a movie. The crash happens, and me and my wife look at each other. And we're like, "Oh boy, what just happened?" We run out there. There is no like leg hanging down like a movie. He had moved by that point. I didn't see any of that, but we look up through the hole, and he's like, "Hey," and we're like, "Hey," looking up at the sky out of our house. The sky is there. We had to get whole. It was the shingles and the boards got replaced. So just sky up there. And he was like, "Hey, it was an accident." We're like, "Yeah, okay." And so they're coming to fix it tomorrow. Accidents happen. Didn't like yell at the guy or anything, but
So you just have like a big like tarp or a piece of plastic over it right now? What is
well, now
the?
it's roofed. It's roofed over
Oh,
now.
so okay, so they just got fixed inside, like the
Yeah, but
ceiling and all that.
we took so again the light is hanging down and everything. We took a trash bag and put it over the hole, taped it up there,
Mm.
and they're coming to fix it tomorrow. So it's been an interesting week. Hopefully, I'm literally going to go out here and see that our HVAC is fixed. Hopefully, Lord willing, there's nothing else to do with that because that's been a nightmare.
I know. Yeah, I know you do have a coat on there. Is that why?
Yeah, that's that. We have had my parents donate heaters to us on top of the ones we already had, and we've just been having them in like every room. I've been toting a heater around with me everywhere I go. It's really cool having your heat go out in the winter. I don't suggest it at all. I would argue it's a little bit better than if it was the blasting heat middle of the summer, though. So
Yeah, I've had mine go out in the summer before, and it wasn't like a
yeah,
major thing, but it still took like a whole day to get somebody to fix it, and
it's
it's
been
not pleasant.
it has been 6 days
Oh,
to get it fixed
mm.
because of supply chain issues.
Oh, of course. I think
Really,
that's just the standard. No matter what is happening, you can just throw that out there, and there's nothing you can say. There's nothing.
yeah,
You're just like,
just like
okay.
because the guy came, he fixed one component of it that had been broken. And he came back and he's like, "Hey, we're looking for a fan motor. I'll come back if I can find one." He's like, "I'm gonna go search at different places." And he came back and was like, "I didn't find one. There
Here's
wasn't
one
one."
that might work. I found it on something old.
Ah, boy. The joys of owning a house. All right. That's it. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. Thank you for listening. And I mean, if you made it this far, now you know a bunch of stuff that's going on in our lives.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to y'all. Yeah, there's nothing else this week. We'll talk to y'all next week.
See you guys then.